This piece of artwork is titled the Perineum. Well, I think that it would probably be most beneficial to draw the female perineum and then understand that some of the muscles will be located in different regions for the male, and that we could start with a more complex situation with more structures and then talk about how things are different with the male with fewer structures. So this will be the female perineum. And we'll begin by putting our borders in. And checking in to see if you remember what our borders are. So what is this anterior border of the perineum? Nice. Pubic symphysis. Laterally, what bony landmark will we find? Yep. Ischial tuberosity. And posteriorly, coccyx. Okay, let's add our 3 openings. Well, no, hold on. Let's make our defining boundary here, spanning ischial tuberosities. To divide us into 2 triangles. This one being urogenital, and this one posteriorly referred to as the anal triangle. And now time for the 3 openings of the female perineum. Anteriorly, the urethra. Posterior to the urethra, the vagina. And in the anal triangle, the anus. And another landmark that helps tie everything together, right down the midline, we'll use a black dot to represent the perineal body. So the perineal body is a difficult concept to explain because in the cadavers, it's the way that the embalming has happened, you're not going to really be able to palpate the perineal body, and it's probably not that appealing to palpate the perineal body on a patient or classmate. So the best I can do for you in this drawing is show you that the perineal body is a place where a lot of the muscles of the perineum come together for common attachment. So it's really interesting because usually muscles go from bone to bone, but in the perineum that's not always the case. We're going to have some muscles spanning this dense fibrous tissue. So one anatomy instructor on this campus once described the perineal body as a pop rivet. So kind of like with joining pieces of steel together, or that little rivet you have on your Levi jeans, right? That little kind of pop rivet that's holding the denim together. The perineal body formed to hold these muscles together in the perineum. Okay? So I don't think you're going to find it in dissection, but what you could visually do is you could just line up with the midline, and you could split the difference between vaginal and anal openings. Will be a little bit easier to find with the female compared with the male, but this is the perineal body, and that's about the best I can do in terms of the concept there. And now let's bring it together and look at its function by drawing the muscles in which I think would be good to contrast the muscles in the drawing by switching colors. Let's go to red. And let's draw in these muscles that have attachment onto the perineal body. External anal sphincter, obviously wrapping around the anus. So as to close it off. And the external anal sphincter has muscle fibers that will communicate with the perineal body. Okay? For the vagina, there will be muscles that surround some of the erectile tissue that is found within the labia majora, and the muscle that is found outside of this erectile tissue is called bulbospongiosis. So we're going to talk about that erectile tissue in detail, don't you worry. It's just not part of the concept now. This is the bulbospongiosis muscle. Also attaching onto the perineal body from ischial tuberosities. Let's put in some muscle tissue here, like so. This represents two muscles. One is more superficial than the other. So these are the superficial and deep transverse perineal muscles. So if you were dissecting, you would go through skin, superficial fascia. If you were then between the ischial tuberosity and the perineal body, you would first encounter superficial transverse perineal, then you would remove that, and you would find the deep transverse perineal. Okay. The urethra needs to be able to be closed off. So now let's wrap around it the urethral sphincter. Yeah, we're over time here slightly. Let me finish this and then I'll make sure you get your full 10. The urethral sphincter wrapped around urethra. And the last muscle to add here spans from pubic symphysis to ischial tuberosity. So on both sides. This is the ischiocavernosus muscle. So ischiocavernosus and bulbospongiosis, they share a function of being located superficial to erectile tissue, which we will talk about in detail. And so we find these two muscles spanning these two regions. And that is the perineum. I can take questions now. I can let you guys have a break.